When I tell people that I bought a toy store, the immediate response is, how are you competing with Amazon?
Zakos with Zakos Realty and Design Group. I'm actually kicking off a new series here, and I've Caleb sitting with me. In this new series, we want to focus and highlight local entrepreneurs, local business owners, local businesses. I have a background and history of starting a couple businesses and helping startups with acquisitions, and obviously been doing real estate for 5 years now, but being an entrepreneur, local business owner is near and dear to my heart. So I wanted to start highlighting some of the people that kind of define greater Sarasota area and what I like to say is the heartbeat of the area. Caleb is a local business owner. He owns All for Life and he owns the Toy Lab. I'm really intrigued by this interview because unlike traditional entrepreneurs where they kind of started from nothing, he opted to purchase these businesses and grow them from that point. In your experience, being an entrepreneur business owner, is this something that you think is a trait that you're born with, or do you think that it is something that is learned over the years?
I'd say it's twofold. If your personality is okay accepting risk, then you're more inclined to be an entrepreneur. There's plenty of people that I've met that it's just not for them, and I understand they need stability. If you're looking for that as a business owner, it's not going to work out well. But at the same time, I've learned so many lessons and always learning, and that's what brings me back tomorrow is I know I haven't achieved everything yet, and I'm going to learn new lessons tomorrow. And so that's where, even as an entrepreneur today, I'm still learning, and so definitely not born with that part.
All for Life, I guess quickly you can talk about what that is, but in doing that, what was your first real job and how'd that lead you into this purchase of this new business and why the industry and all that?
My first real job was at 12 years old being a paper boy, and that's where I started learning about interacting with people, selling paper subscriptions. I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning and deliver their paper, have it ready for them in the morning. That was my first touch into business, and I've had many jobs along the way.
So in doing that paper stuff, so that's a route, that's a route you're running basically?
Yeah, I'd wake up at my house, have the papers in my driveway, and then I'd have to walk my neighborhood.
Did you get paid by the hour or by how many papers you were delivered? Do you remember?
By the customer. Yeah, so I had to add more neighbors to add more money to my route.
So that's like your first taste of entrepreneurism, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're walking in the middle of the night and you know who's buying from you and who's not, and then you got to come back during the daytime to try and make it sell.
That's really intriguing. And then from there, what was your next job?
Next job was a pizza parlor. So
that's not a that's not a real job.
It's a service job though. So again, you're still interacting with people, listening to what they want, and trying to give them the best service that you can. And so I applied skills from Paperboy directly into that, and then that just continues to snowball.
Yeah, and I think there's no other job like being in the service industry. It teaches you so much.
As long as you're willing to listen.
So All for Life, at what point did you decide to break off and purchase this business? What is the business, and why the industry?
Sure. So All for Life is a drug and alcohol testing company primarily. We also offer some ancillary services, but that's been the core of the business. And I was in a career that had some significant risk to it and required me to work long hours, 50, 60-hour weeks. I'm a young father. I have 3 children and a wife. And so I'd reached a point in my career where I felt like I was going to continue on until retirement or make a clean break and try something totally new. This business opportunity presented itself through some family connections. And so while I had never dreamed of owning a drug testing business, being able to see the opportunity and being able to cast a vision of how our life could change for the better is what ultimately brought us to the point of the purchase. So that's been 3.5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a change not only in career paths, but in states. We moved here to Florida, purchased the business. And so there's been a lot of change in our life.
This is a unique business industry. I could rip it off and do my own. Or was there specific reasons? I know you said that it kind of presented itself, but what did that actually mean from that perspective?
Right. So the family member involved had mentioned that they were looking to sell. and they had a partner in the business that was not wanting to purchase it from him because he was also wanting to retire. And so both partners at the same time are looking to sell and get out. I had a connection there that we could trust to know that the information we're being provided is somewhat accurate.
Gotcha.
And then I did have some experience with the drug testing industry through my previous work. So I was familiar with the process, the procedures, and the reasons. And so it wasn't a huge jump to consider actually owning a business like that. And then All for Life is the name we changed the company to, just to reflect the fact of when people think of drug testing, they don't think of something positive, they think of something negative.
Yeah.
It's an accountability thing for sure. But at the same point, we're seeing so many stories about people dying from drug overdoses. And so All for Life is really the emphasis of our business of we're doing this to help prevent and preserve life, not so much your workplace accountability. It's more of encouraging a positive life choice.
And I'm a huge proponent of whether it's you're starting a business or you acquire a business, but if you're a business owner, you have to have some sort of differentiator in order to excel in that business. Otherwise, I believe you're just going to die. So did you see, when looking at this business, a differentiator, or did you see something that like, oh, this could be a differentiator within the business, and then I knew that would lead to instant growth? How'd that kind of work itself out for you?
So the business we purchased had already been in business for over 20 years, owned by the same individual, or he would have partners come and go. There was a established client base that had been with him for the long term. I liked the stability that offered, but also at the same point, understanding that the world has changed dramatically in the last 20 years, and the company itself didn't necessarily. They had good service, which I think you need to found your company on.
Of course.
But as far as technology and processes and things like that, they were primarily stuck 20 years ago.
Antiquated, yeah.
And so bringing a new, fresh approach, integrating technology and the opportunities that provides, I saw the growth part.
Gotcha.
As far as that's concerned.
And that makes perfect sense. Now, is there one thing that you could point your finger at in this first couple of years of All for Life that you could say directly contributed to the growth of that company?
The pandemic, of course, hit everyone hard.
Yeah.
And that was almost at our 1 year mark of owning the business. Wow. So we had gone a whole year of just learning what it's like to be a business owner, learning our clients, what they need. And so we felt comfortable at that point to project on our growth plans for 2020, and then we threw them all out the window in March.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, it has just continued to be listening to our clients and what they need and changing our approaches. So prior to COVID, no one did COVID testing, and that includes our company. Yeah. And we had to pick that up very quickly in order for our clients to be able to work, which they previously had used drug testing for that, but now they needed COVID testing just to be able to function. Right. And so being able to meet that need and keep our clients working and make them happy makes us happy and kept everyone in business.
That you saw an opportunity or a need, if you want to call it that, and made it work, and then it led to future growth. Now, you've been in All for Life for so many years. I think you said 3.5 years, right?
Yes.
In this next purchase, completely different than All for Life, but you just acquired the Toy Lab out of downtown Sarasota, right there on Main Street. Iconic, historic, great spot. But what did you see in that business? Why that industry? Can you talk us a little bit about that?
Sure. So it presented itself in a unique way of just looking at businesses for sale in the area. Never have owned a retail store, never in the toy industry. And so it is a big jump. But when you look at business as a whole, there are basic building blocks, just like the Legos that I sell, that if you can figure that out, you can apply that across a multitude of industries. And so listening to your customers and meeting a need, every industry.
Yeah.
And so I'm applying the same lessons we learned with All for Life into the Toy Lab. And when people are looking at the economy, your investment advisor always tells you to diversify. This is a way of diversifying a business portfolio in a unique way. But when you think about it from an investment standpoint, it's not so unique in that I have totally different industries that we're working with. And so one may go up, one may go down, but at the end of the day, you have a diverse portfolio that you're working with.
Additional question on top of that would be, in projecting the next 5 years on the toy lab, what do you foresee that looking like? And do you have specific steps that you feel like you can take to achieve the success and growth of that company?
Right. So you can look at things either as an opportunity or as a risk.
Yeah.
And so when I tell people that I bought a toy store, the immediate response is, how are you competing with Amazon? And so Amazon is obviously a well-known business, and that's what people immediately think of.
Yeah.
And when you look at the landscape of the toy industry, I think you definitely see fewer toy stores today than you did 20 years ago, even 30, 40. But at the same time, that is an opportunity because there are just fewer spaces for parents and grandparents to bring the children to experience something like I have.
Yeah.
You cannot experience that on a website. And when you go to a big box store, they have toy aisles, but you don't get that same experience as when you walk through my door and the kids are surrounded by toys and the opportunity that presents to them.
Yeah.
And so that's where, yes, it is a challenging work environment, but I enjoy a challenge.
I love it. And, to your point, the Sarasota itself is probably one of the most tourist-driven areas on the Gulf Coast of Florida. So that, like you talked about, being on vacation, having grandparents, and that experience is something that, yes, it's gotten diluted, if you want to call it that, but it's not going away. There is opportunities there for sure. How do you think that you will manage both businesses effectively? I mean, you have literally two sides of the spectrum on businesses that you're owning and running and managing. Do you have a game plan in your head of how you're effectively going to grow both these businesses simultaneously?
Yeah, so that's the age-old question, the difference between leadership and management. Management obviously gets kind of kicked as far as a style of leadership, but I think it's valuable to pair both in that I need to lead both companies and present the vision, but building a great team that can implement that vision and then managing them to make sure and holding them accountable that that's actually being achieved. Yeah. And so we have a great team for both businesses right now, and I couldn't have reached out to purchase another store if All for Life had a team that was a mess. Yeah. And so because they're running so well, I can now purchase another business, and already the team at the toy store is just spectacular. And so looking towards the future of keeping that either exact team in place or just that feel that the team is accomplishing right now, and being able to pull back and trust that my team is doing what they need to do is my long-term vision for managing multiple places.
If you're sitting down with someone that's, whether they're starting a business from scratch or they're getting ready to acquire a business, what are 3 things that you would tell them to do that will ultimately lead to their success that you've taken from your experiences in purchasing these 2 businesses and running and managing them effectively?
Sure. So getting wise counsel is important. But as you talk to people that have never stepped out into doing something, you have to be able to sift through the noise and the fear. Again, looking at opportunities versus risks. Every business that you acquire will have some level of risk. You just cannot exist in business and not have risk. If that's not something that's built into your DNA, understanding that this may not be the right route for you. And if you have friends and family that love you and know you personally, listening to that. But at the same time, understanding that even when you're looking at potentially a distressed asset or a distressed company, that there's opportunities there. So you can look at the bad, or you can look at the ways that you can bring change and bring good. That's an important piece of, as you're looking at potentially starting your own business or buying a business, that's an important piece. Humility is another important piece. If you can't admit that you don't know everything, then you're going to fail very quickly. Yeah. Building a team of professionals, whether that's your own employees at your company or just your service professionals, your CPAs, your attorneys, your realtors, having someone who's knowledgeable to tell you what you don't know will save you in the long run. Yeah. And so just being able to admit, I don't know everything, I need to reach out to an expert and have them help me, guide me, and take me to that next level. The third thing I'd say is related to humility of learning from your mistakes. If you go into something with the goal of making zero mistakes, you're very quickly going to fail in that regard. But when you see the mistakes you've made and you're able to learn and adapt and pivot from that, that's a very important piece of the transition of whether it's starting or buying a business.
Great advice, and very well said. I think any entrepreneur, business owner can take that and would agree with it as well, so it's great. And then on the reverse side, if you could travel back in time and have 15 minutes with your former self when you were first starting this endeavor, what would be the one thing that you would say to yourself that you think could save you tons of heartache, maybe some mistakes and things like that along the way?
I'd just say saddle up. The unknown is out there. And so we bought our first business in 2019. And obviously everyone knows what happened about 12 months later. And no one knows what the next 12 months is bringing either. And so as long as I'm willing to adapt and to listen to my customers and to be willing to change, mistakes will still be made in the next 12 months just the same as I made the last 12 months. But that's, again, part of owning a business that makes it fun and exciting. Yeah. Every day is not the same. And so waking up tomorrow with new challenges, I'm up for it.
And perseverance, right?
Gotta be.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us, and I'm super inspired by talking to people like you and other business owners locally.
Yeah.
If you have any suggestions of anyone that you think I should interview or sit down with that you think we could get some great insight from, please let me know. I'd love to reach out to them and connect. But thank you for coming. Thank you for watching and listening, and we'll be back soon.